In today's surprise episode, we're talking about a case that'll drop your jaw. But don't keep your mouth open too long. You never know what your neighbor might put in there. It's the case of Nathaniel Bar Jonah, right now on Love and Murder. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to a new episode and a surprise episode of Love and Murder, the weekly true crime podcast discussing relationships gone terribly wrong. I am your host, Kai, and this show discusses true crime cases told in the form of a story with mystery, suspense, and just a little bit of humor sprinkled on top, but never at the expense of the victim. Be sure to subscribe to Love and Murder on whatever platform you're on, as well as give us a 5-star review right now so you don't forget. If you're new here, then of course listen to the episode first and then please leave us a review. And also, welcome. So, we don't normally drop an episode on Thursdays, but I wanted to give you a surprise episode to go along with your meal. However, you may not want to be eating as you're listening to this particular case. Seriously, there were many times while I was doing my research that I had to calm my own stomach. Don't say I didn't warn you. But first, I wanted to remind you to head on over to our Patreon group where we have a ton of bonuses just waiting for you. Last week, we did a double bonus episode where one was a behind the scenes of us coming down from a heavy case, and the other was a case of this little old lady who wasn't as nice as you think a great grandmother would be. We also have cases that made me so angry that I didn't hide it while recording, cases about serial killers, and even an episode that portrayed an interview with a very sick individual. If you want to support us and get commercial-free episodes, then join at only $1 a month. And you can get commercial-free episodes there where you don't have to hear all of this and it goes directly into the case. But if you want all the goodies and behind the scenes and everything like that, then our most popular tiers are $5 and above. Go ahead and check us out, www.patreon.com/love and murder. We'd love to have you as part of our lamb community. Now, enough about that. On to the show. David Paul Brown was born in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1957. I couldn't find his parents' names, but I did find a lot about his childhood. Are you ready? Ready? You sure? Okay. When David was little, like around 6 years old, he used to pick at his scabs until they bled. Then he would suck the blood from his cuts. His teachers would call his mother all the time to tell her what her kid was doing and that it was disgusting both the students and the teachers. In 1964, when David was 7, he got a Ouija board as a present. And I'm just asking, what kind of present is that? Well, maybe it's just me. Anyways, excited about his new present, he went to tell the 5-year-old girl next door. He told her that they could try it out together, but she would have to come over and, go down in the basement or his room or wherever he had the Ouija board. She agreed and went over to his house, and then they went into his basement. David brought out the Ouija board, and while the little girl was inspecting it, out of nowhere, he started strangling her. Of course, she started screaming, and David's mother heard it and stopped what was going on. Now, instead of realizing that this wasn't normal behavior, his mom figured that David didn't know what he was doing and told him basically, don't do that again. And then that was just that. That was it. That was it. So, problem solved, I'm guessing. Lesson learned, all that jazz. I don't know. In January of 1970, when David was 12, he went to play with his next door neighbor, a 6-year-old boy. David told him that they would go sledding and, as friends do, next door neighbors, whatever. The boy said, okay. But it's weird. It's a 12-year-old and you're going sledding with a 6-year-old. Usually 12-year-olds are like, oh, he's a baby. I don't want to hang with him or whatever. But I don't know. Okay, no judgments. So they went over to the hill that was near their house. And, the little boy is getting ready to go sledding. But instead of sledding, David sexually assaulted the boy. Did his mom think he didn't know what he was doing again? Like, I wonder if she heard about this and she was just like, well, he's only 12. He doesn't even know what's going on. Maybe he just didn't know what was going on. I don't know. But of course, nothing came out of this incident either, so life went on for David. Next, not an exact time was given, but David tried to get two boys who were riding their bikes at the time to come with him to the cemetery. He probably told them like he wanted to show them something or, something along those lines. They started to follow, but then one of the boys got suspicious and convinced his friend to leave. So they left, but later on, it was found out that David had planned to murder them. I know that little boy was so happy he listened to his friend. In March of 1975, when David was 18, he dressed up as a cop and went out. He told an 8-year-old boy who was on his way to school at the time that he was a cop and to come with him. The boy followed him, and David snatched him up, put him in his car, and drove away. A witness saw what happened and called the police. After a brief search, authorities found the car matching the witness's description, parked away from other cars in a parking lot. The cop called for backup, and when backup arrived, both of the police officers made David get out of the car. When they approached the car, they found the boy bloodied and near death. He had urinated and defecated on himself, and that happened due to sexual assault. And he was near death because David had been strangling him at the time that the officers arrived. So basically, they saved his life. David was arrested, but received a year's probation. The hell? Wow. Being that he was getting away with what he was getting away with doing whatever he wanted, David figured, why the hell not, and tried again. This time, a few days before he graduated from high school, he went through the same motions again. He dressed up as a cop, told a 9-year-old girl that he was a police and to come with him. He abducted her as well and sexually assaulted her. This little girl started throwing up uncontrollably, so David drove up to some random sidewalk and just basically threw her out of the car. Once again, someone witnessed this, took note of the license plate, and called the cops. Do you see that? Basically, what I'm getting here is like David doesn't even care if anyone sees him. He just doesn't even care because he's had no repercussions. So I think he just feels like, what's going to happen to me? Anyway, they called the police and he was arrested. Of course, no one told David's parole officer, so he finished the parole he had already been on and got a letter basically thanking him for staying out of trouble and for his, quote, cooperation. So now David basically knows that he can do whatever he wants, especially to kids, and nothing's going to happen to him. Kids can't fight back. Nobody's putting him in jail. Nobody's doing anything. So what do you think he did with this information? On September 24th, 1977, he went back out, this time to White City Cinnamons in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. He didn't even bother dressing up, He went to a movie theater, and as two boys were exiting, he told them that he was just an undercover FBI agent and they were under arrest. I mean, seriously, I would have been, as a kid, I would have been like, for what? Show me your badge. So many questions I would have had, like, really? But, everybody's different, and who knows, I might have gone with him too. Kids are kids. He told them to get in the car, which they did, and he handcuffed them. He then took them to a secluded area and began molesting and torturing them. He then jumped on one of the boys' chests over and over again. Mind you, he's 375 pounds at the time, which is 170 kilos. And he's jumping on a young boy's chest. Then he strangled him. When he was sure that this boy was dead, he drove off with the other boy in his trunk. Well, he didn't check hard enough because the boy regained consciousness and found the strength to go and find help. With the help of his descriptions, police were able to find the other boy and David, and the boy was still alive in his trunk. David was arrested again. This time, though, David was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 18 to 20 years in prison. They sent him to the Montana State Prison. Look, to be honest with you, if you're eating right now, I would stop. Like, seriously. I warned you. So while he was in Montana State Prison, Guards said that he would pick his scabs and suck the blood from his cuts, the same as when he was a child. The only difference is one of the guards reported, this is disgusting, that he caught him once with a scab in his mouth and he, quote, appeared to be having sex, end quote. During his time in prison, he met with a psychiatrist, and in his sessions, he described his fantasies. He'd fantasize about killing, dissecting, and eating children. At this point, the psychiatrist put in a recommendation for him to be moved to a mental hospital. He was then moved from the prison to Bridgewater State Hospital. This hospital is in southeastern Massachusetts and is a state-run facility for the criminally insane and for people whose sanity is being evaluated for the criminal justice system. On March 2nd, 1984, David randomly changed his name to Nathaniel Benjamin Levi Bar Jonah. No one really understood why he changed his name, and he gave a plethora of reasons, none of which made sense. For instance, he stated he'd changed it because he was Jewish and he wanted to have his name reflect that he was Jewish. However, if you looked at his background, his family was Pentecostal and of Scandinavian descent. So then he said he changed his name because he wanted to know what it felt like to be discriminated against as a Jewish person. Either way, these are the only reasons he gave. In the hospital, one of his therapists wrote in their notes, quote, Brown's sexual fantasies, bizarre in nature, outline methods of torture and extend to dissection and cannibalism, end quote. And also, quote, express a curiosity about the taste of human flesh, end quote. In 1999, Superior Court Judge Walter E. Steele agreed with psychiatric evaluations that they didn't find David/Nathaniel to be a dangerous threat. Really? Okay. Psychiatrists argued that Massachusetts had failed to prove that Nathaniel was dangerous, and the judge ruled in their favor. This is insanity. So, instead of transferring him back to prison, they released him and put him on probation if he promised to move to Montana and live with his mother. He was also required to continue with psychiatric treatment, which, of course, he was like, okay. And he was released and moved to Great Falls, Montana. On August 9th, 1991, 1 month after being released, Nathaniel saw a 7-year-old boy sitting in a car by himself at a post office in Oxford, Massachusetts. This is clear across the country. For those of you who are not in the U.S., the distance between Montana and Massachusetts is 2,318 miles, or 3,720 kilometers. What was he even doing in Massachusetts? Wasn't he supposed to be in Montana? Anyway, Nathaniel forced himself into the car and sat on the boy's chest. At this point, he weighed 275 pounds, which is 125 kilos. A bunch of witnesses saw this, including the boy's mother, and rushed to rescue him, so at this point, Nathaniel ran away. I mean, basically, like, what did he expect would happen if a bunch of people are there? People are just around, and you think they're just going to let you sit on a boy's chest? Or maybe, thinking about it now, he was so fixated on the boy that he didn't even realize that anyone was around. Wow. Either way, that's scary. Police found him and he was arrested. At the station, he told officers that he wasn't trying to hurt the boy. No, see, what had happened was I was just trying to get out of the rain. Yeah, that's it. I have this disorder, see, that if the rain touches me, I melt. So I saw this car and figured this kid would be kind enough to help me out. He didn't say that. But seriously, he did tell officers that he was trying to get out of the rain, and that's why he went into the car. But when no one bought that, because that's kind of bullshit, he finally admitted that he totally planned on killing the boy. He was then sentenced to probation in Montana. You're in Massachusetts, and so you're sentenced to probation in Montana. What does it take? What does it take to put this guy away? How many kids has he gone after by now? Okay, let me think. So basically, if my count is correct, this would have made 6. Is that right? Add this to the fact that he told his psychiatrist that he fantasizes about murdering, dissecting, and eating children. I don't understand what it would take to put this guy away. On February 6, 1996, a boy named Zachary Ramsey disappeared while on his way to school. He'd left his house around 7:34 a.m. wearing a blue denim jacket that had green sleeves, jeans, black high tops, and a blue jersey with his last name on the back in gold letters. He walked his usual route to school, which was through an alleyway. Witnesses said they did see him come through that morning, but they'd also seen an off-white car almost hit him. At 7:15 a.m., someone reported seeing Nathaniel wearing a navy blue jacket that could be described as, quote, police-looking clothes, and he was standing by a dumpster in the alleyway. Another witness said that around 7:45 a.m., they saw Zach looking distressed with an obese man following closely behind him. So my question after listening to all of this is, why is no one trying to help this child? They're just watching this happen and watch this child walk past. So somewhere between the alleyway between 6th and 7th Street, this is where Zach disappeared. His parents filed a missing person reports, and the police department, this particular police department, wasn't very used to cases like abduction. So they kind of did an investigation, but after a very short time, they chalked it up as a cold case. And, tried to they got a couple leads, but again, it was cold leads. And in 2011, with the strong objection of Zach's mother, a judge declared him legally dead. That was it. Case closed. Good job, Johnson. And that was it. In the meantime, Nathaniel was living in an apartment complex close to the disappearance of the boy. Some neighbors said that they were suspicious of his activities, but no one had any hard evidence. You know how you look out your window at the weird neighbor, what are you up to in there? What are you doing? I guess that's how they were with him. They would just look at him and be like, I know you're up to no good. I just know it. But they had nothing to prove it. One neighbor said that after her son spent time with Nathaniel, he became withdrawn and angry, and she didn't know why. Which, my question is, why is your son spending time with just some random dude, some random adult? Seriously? Some other neighbors said that whenever Nathaniel cooked for them, the meat was strange, but he would always assure them that he got it from some deer that he'd shot. Which was a good explanation, except that he didn't have a hunting license, a gun, and no one ever saw him going hunting. In 1999, he was arrested outside of an elementary school for, again, impersonating a police officer and carrying a fake gun. They charged him with impersonating an officer and put him in jail. Then they obtained a warrant to search his home. When they got inside, they found thousands of pictures of children that were cut out from magazines. They found some kind of code-written notebook and a list of boys' names including Zachary Ramsey and the word died in all caps next to it. They found newspaper clippings about the Ramsey case, and they found a piece of human bone. Of course, they dove deeper into investigating. They also found an off-white Toyota Corolla and found out this was Nathaniel's mom's car, which he was driving the day Zach went missing. It was also revealed that Nathaniel's mother and brother were out of town on the same day Zach went missing. Also on that day, the day before and the day after, Nathaniel didn't go to work. Some previous roommates of his informed the police that they had found clothes in their apartment matching the description of what Zach was wearing when he disappeared. They'd also seen bloody gloves in the apartment. Another roommate said that Nathaniel would just randomly bring up this guy named Zach in conversations. Okay, so why did none of these people go to the police and say something? Nothing? So the notebook was sent off to the FBI, and after some months, they were actually able to decode it. But before I tell y'all what was said in it, let me tell you about this part of the investigation. When detectives went into Nathaniel's garage and sprayed it down with a chemical mainly comprised of phosphorus, they found the word, quote, "heta." This means that heta was written in blood. This coincided with a missing boy whose name was James Heta. They found it Tita, but the boy's name was Teta. So it could have been that the I was an E, but anyways, like I said, it was written in blood. So James had been abducted on August 23rd, 1973, and police found his body on August 25th, 1973. The autopsy of the body showed that he had been raped and strangled, which shows allegedly Nathaniel's MO. Nathaniel was then charged with kidnapping and sexual assault of 3 boys and the murder of Zachary Ramsey. When his trial began, he was prosecuted for abducting and molesting 3 boys, like I said, convicted of kidnapping, aggravated assault, sexual assault, and charged with the torture of at least one of the boys who he had hung from the ceiling. Around this time is when investigators were able to decode his journal. In it, it described torturing, killing, and eating children. There were recipes using children's body parts. Quote, barbecued kid, my little kid dessert, sex a la carte, little boy stew, lunches served on the patio with roasted child, French fried kid, and little boy pot pies are just some of the recipes in this book. The journal also referenced serving the previously mentioned recipes to his neighbors. There was also a list of 22 names in the journal where a lot of them were local children. Police had also taken a meat grinder from the scene in which they found some hair inside. They took it for DNA testing, but it belonged to a black male, not Zachary. This DNA was also different from the bone fragment that they'd previously found, which also didn't belong to Zachary. The other names in the journals were never, ever identified. His neighbors testified about this weird meat he'd fed them, but there was no actual evidence of this. They also noted that within the time that Zach disappeared, Nathaniel started having cookouts where he served burgers, chili, spaghetti, casserole, meat pies, and other heavy meat dishes. Dishes that were heavy in the meat area. Usually people would tell him that the meat tasted weird, but as I said before, he would tell them that he'd gone deer hunting and this was deer meat. One time, one of the neighbors told Nathaniel that she thought the taste of the meat was disgusting, to which he just told her that he had personally, quote, hunted, killed, butchered, and wrapped the meat, end quote, of this deer. Everything on this front, though, was just circumstantial. They did, however, testify that Nathaniel had been molesting their children, one of which was the son of the woman who'd said his meat was disgusting. Prosecutors alleged that Nathaniel had killed Zach and eaten him. However, the defense swayed Zach's mother into believing and testifying that her son was still alive, which made the jurors not convict Nathaniel for his murder. Really? Really? Wow. Nathaniel pleaded what, people? What did he plead? Not guilty! And maintained his innocence. Jurors were still convinced that he was a dangerous sexual deviant and an extreme child predator, but not entirely convinced that he was a murderer. What does it take with this guy? Anyway, and now 36-year-old Mary Patrone testified that Nathaniel was the man who had abducted her and assaulted her in 1974 by dressing up as a police officer and luring her to his car. However, he couldn't be charged for this because the statute of limitations had expired. Investigators also implicated him in the disappearance of Janice Pocket, a 7-year-old girl, 10 months before the trial. Nathaniel was found guilty and sentenced to 130 years in prison for molestation charges. Nothing about abduction, nothing about murder, just molestation charges. But 130 years in prison, Montana authorities weren't aware of Nathaniel's Massachusetts criminal record, which was a talking point for activists who were campaigning at the time to force former sex offenders to have to register. I also want to note that when authorities had done an investigation after they tied Zach's abduction to Nathaniel, they noticed that even though Nathaniel was known to be a 300-pound, 140 kilo heavy eater, for the month after Zach disappeared, he didn't really do any grocery shopping. But that's all circumstantial because his pantries could have just been stocked beforehand, or he could have paid, for his groceries with cash. So you don't know. You can't say this is hard evidence. It's just circumstantial and people talking. Nathaniel appealed his sentence. Of course he did. But for the first time in his life, he was denied. In December 2004, the Montana Supreme Court denied his appeal and upheld his 130-year sentence. It only took for him to murder, eat, molest, abduct how many children for them to finally put their foot down? Ugh. Nathaniel maintained his innocence up until his death. That's right. On April 13, 2008, he was found unresponsive in his cell. With an autopsy, it was derived that he died due to his unhealthy appetite, and I'm not talking about eating children. He basically loved to eat, he was obese, and he died of a heart attack. He was 51 years old at the time. To this day, no one knows how many people he killed, but he's listed as a possible suspect in a lot of murders in Wyoming, Montana, and Massachusetts. And that is the insanely gruesome case of Nathaniel Bar Jonah. I warned you not to eat while you were listening to this case. Let me know what y'all think about this case in the comments below, or head on over to our website, www.murderandlove.com. That's love and murder backwards, murderandlove.com, and shoot us an SOS. Once you get to the homepage, you will see a button that basically says, click here to record, and you can record an SOS right there. You can also just click on the SOS link in the show notes below, like right below this episode. If you just look below, you can see that link for SOS. We would definitely love to hear from you. If you like this horrible, horrible episode, then head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and rate us 5 stars. You can also download Good Pods and rate us on there too. Follow us on social media at facebook.com/relationshipcrime, Instagram at loveandmurderpodcast. Don't forget to check out our Patreon, www.patreon.com/loveandmurder, so you can get either and commercial-free episodes so you don't have to deal with any of these previous commercials and you can get right into the episode, current bonuses, and all our previous bonuses over there. You can join starting at just $1 a month, but the most popular tier and the best bang for your buck is the $5 and above tiers, where you get bonus episodes behind the scenes. You get to talk to us, everything like that. And very soon, Shar is coming back for another segment that we have coming out. So join us over at Patreon, www.patreon.com/loveandmurder, and become an exclusive lamb in our community over there. Join our Facebook fan group by searching for Love and Murder fan page in Google or Facebook, or simply by clicking the link in the show notes below. Find our awesome merch by going to our website, www.murderandlove.com. Love and Murder backwards, murderandlove.com, and clicking on our shop in the menu above. And a free and easy way to help us out is by simply sharing this episode. Share with your mom, share with your neighbor, share with the weird guy down the street. Share, 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 share. And as always, we end each episode by reminding you that it's all love and no murder, y'all. Enjoy your meal. Good night.